There is a pattern woven through human history, older than nations, older than religions, older than the languages spoken today. It is the pattern of separation, of dividing people into categories and convincing them those categories define who they are. This pattern has shaped civilizations, fueled conflict, and guided societies for centuries. And most people never realize they are living inside it. From the moment a human being is born, they are introduced not to themselves, but to the groups they are expected to belong to. Before they speak, they are assigned a race. Before they understand the world, they inherit a religion. Before they form beliefs, they absorb political expectations. Identity is not discovered. It is given. The box is built before the child arrives, and the child grows up inside it. Once a person believes they belong to a group, something subtle changes. They begin to see differences as distance. Labels become boundaries, and once there is a boundary, there is someone on the other side of it. The mind reorganizes around us and them. Actions are judged not by what happens, but by who performs them. The same behavior is forgiven within one's group and condemned outside it. Objectivity fades, perception narrows, reality fragments into competing interpretations shaped by loyalty. Information that supports the group feels obvious. Information that challenges it feels suspicious. Contradictions are explained away before they are examined. Nuance becomes difficult to recognize. Two people can witness the same event and experience entirely different realities. Not because one is more intelligent than the other, but because identity determines what the nervous system allows to be seen. The mind filters automatically, protecting the emotional security of belonging. This is why arguments rarely change anyone's mind. The conflict is not between ideas, it is between identities. And when identity feels threatened, the body reacts before awareness has time to intervene. The mind shifts into defense. Most people believe these reactions are personal opinions, but often they are signals of belonging. Agreement feels safe. Dissent feels dangerous. People begin monitoring their own thoughts before they are spoken. They filter their opinions to match the emotional tone around them. They learn what is acceptable to question and what is not. Conversation becomes performance. Silence becomes caution. Authenticity becomes risk. Many no longer ask, "What do I actually see?" They ask, "What is safe to say?" This quiet self-censorship is rarely recognized. It feels like maturity, like social awareness, like responsibility. But beneath it, something contracts. Independent perception weakens, curiosity narrows, and the individual slowly learns to abandon their own seeing in exchange for belonging. The nervous system responds before reflection begins. This pressure rarely comes through force. It comes through the fear of separation. Human beings evolved to survive in groups. Even now, exclusion feels like threat. And when belonging feels threatened, clarity gives way to conformity. This is where ego attaches to identity. The group is no longer something you belong to. It becomes something you defend. Facts that challenge identity are dismissed. Nuance is uncomfortable. Complexity is reduced into certainty. The mind would rather be wrong and belong than right and stand alone. As identification deepens, awareness narrows. Fear fuels certainty. Certainty fuels obedience. And obedience, more than belief, is what systems rely on. Create a group, and you create an opponent. Create an identity, and you create conflict. Human beings entangled in identity do not simply divide. They begin to look for validation that their side is right, superior, or justified. This is how societies become predictable. When attention is focused on each other, the larger structures shaping behavior go unnoticed. Division is powerful, not because it is forced, but because it is emotional. When attention is absorbed in conflict, something else quietly disappears. Perspective. Energy moves horizontally toward opponents, arguments, and opposing sides. People begin watching each other, reacting to each other, blaming each other. And while attention remains fixed at that level, it rarely moves upward. The larger systems shaping the environment go unseen. The incentives driving outrage go unquestioned. The structures benefiting from division remain undisturbed. Conflict becomes a form of misdirection. As long as people are fighting one another, they are not examining the conditions that keep the fight alive. This pattern is not new. It has appeared in different forms across centuries. Division keeps attention occupied, and a distracted population becomes easier to predict and influence. Not because anyone is forcing control, but because attention is being guided. This is one of the oldest patterns of social power. Keep the public looking at each other, so they never look at the structure. Politics amplifies it. Media profits from it. Algorithms reward it. Conflict captures attention. Outrage spreads faster than understanding. When attention locks into conflict, the mind narrows, and reaction replaces reflection. And a reactive mind is predictable, defending automatically and looking for confirmation instead of understanding. When large numbers of people react in the same emotional direction, their behavior becomes predictable. What they click, share, support, and reject. This does not require conspiracy. It requires only a simple truth about human psychology. Attention follows emotion, and behavior follows attention. In a state of constant outrage or fear, the mind rarely asks deeper questions. It stays focused on the visible opponent. The argument, the headline, the other side. And when attention remains fixed horizontally on each other, it rarely turns upward or inward to examine the larger forces shaping the environment itself. This is why division is so effective. Not because people are controlled, but because reaction keeps them from seeing clearly. This pattern does not only exist in institutions, it shows up in daily life. In conversations that collapse into ideological debate, in social spaces where opinions are performed for acceptance, in workplaces where comparison replaces self-worth. Belonging becomes performance. Identity becomes presentation. And repetition ingrains these roles so deeply that they begin to feel like the self. Yet beneath all these differences, something else remains true. Most people, on every side, share the same fears, the same hopes, the same longing for safety, dignity, meaning, and connection. What differs are the stories used to interpret those needs. Once this is seen, something shifts. The mind no longer sees enemies, only people shaped by different conditioning. Reactivity softens, compassion deepens, identity loosens. Because what once felt absolute begins to reveal itself as narrative. This pattern persists because it speaks to something deeply human. The desire to belong. When people feel uncertain, they seek groups. When they feel afraid, they seek certainty. And the more threatened they feel, the more tightly they cling to identity. A divided society is not a failure of humanity. It is a predictable result of fear meeting belonging. Because group identity does not only offer protection, it offers emotional reward. Certainty feels stabilizing. Shared outrage feels energizing. Agreement feels like connection. When many people react together, the nervous system interprets it as safety. Intensity becomes bonding. Emotion becomes proof of belonging. This is why division often feels meaningful. It gives people a sense of purpose, a sense of direction, a sense of being part of something larger than themselves. And without awareness, emotional intensity can be mistaken for truth. And yet, beneath all of this, something remains untouched. Awareness, the part of you that sees before narratives shape perception. Awareness begins to awaken when someone pauses long enough to notice the pattern. Often, this awakening begins quietly. A moment of hesitation before reacting. A question that interrupts certainty. a realization that the emotion rising inside you does not fully belong to you. You notice how quickly the body tightens when your group is challenged, how quickly the mind prepares a defense, how little space exists between stimulus and reaction. And for the first time, you see the mechanism in motion. Not outside you, inside you. This is the turning point. Because the moment you observe the reaction, you are no longer completely inside it. When they see not enemies, but people shaped by the same forces. When they realize the conflict they participate in is older than their lifetime. And when this recognition settles, something loosens. The emotional pull of group identity weakens, certainty softens, reaction slows. A different kind of individual begins to emerge. Not someone defined by labels, but someone rooted in consciousness. This individual does not reject society. They simply see beyond the stories that divide it. They understand that identity can be useful, but it is not the self. They no longer need to defend a category in order to feel real. And this awareness does not create isolation. It creates freedom. Freedom to engage without becoming entangled. Freedom to listen without reacting. Freedom to see people as individuals rather than representatives. The movement beyond division does not come from new ideologies or new group identities. It comes from presence, from the pause before reacting, from observing thoughts rather than obeying them, from noticing when identity seeks to defend itself. Each moment of awareness loosens the conditioning. Living consciously does not mean withdrawing from the world. It means moving through it without being owned by its narratives. Participating without losing clarity. Responding instead of reacting. The conscious individual becomes a quiet disruption of division. Not by arguing, but by refusing to feed the emotional machinery that sustains it. Their presence slows the atmosphere around them. They are unmoved by manufactured outrage, yet deeply moved by genuine human suffering. And when enough individuals live this way, something changes. Division begins losing fuel, because division survives on unconscious reaction. Awareness interrupts the cycle. Transformation does not begin at the level of society. It begins at the level of perception. A person who sees clearly cannot be easily manipulated. A mind that recognizes narratives is less likely to be captured by them. This is why awareness is powerful. Not because it fights systems, but because it makes them less effective. The path forward does not require everyone to awaken at once. It begins with a single moment of seeing clearly, a pause, a question, a refusal to accept the identity handed to you without examination. As more individuals begin to see, something collective begins to shift. And slowly, humanity begins to remember something it has forgotten. That beneath all labels and categories, we are not separate beings in opposition. We are expressions of the same awareness, looking out through different eyes, at the same world from different perspectives, with the same longing to belong. See the pattern. See through the pattern. And step beyond it. Because humanity is not divided by nature. It is divided by stories. And awareness is what allows those stories to loosen their hold.